Hey, everybody, and welcome to A Balanced Life here on Black Star Network. Each and every week, we are bringing you tips, tools, and content that you can put in your go bag. Let me tell you, as we jump off into this new year, already, sometimes we can feel stressed, overwhelmed, and really already overextended. How did we get there, and what can we do about it? And honestly, everyone, it begins with you. How are you taking care of yourself? How are you resetting, refocusing, reprioritizing yourself, and putting you on your calendar? Each and every day, we are faced with so many things that we have to go through. And oftentimes, we don't take into account the toll that it takes on our bodies physically and mentally and emotionally. Today, we are going to be joined by Stacey Owens, Leah Watson, as well as Terry Whit Bailey. We're inviting them in to talk to us about what does it mean to really prioritize yourself. Because if you're not in the equation, oftentimes we feel like we're going to be missed. But we've seen all too well that the moment they hand us that pink slip, they've already got someone else to replace us. How are we taking care of ourselves in the midst of our day to day? Welcome in, everyone. Hey, ladies.
How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm glad that you all are here because we talked about so many things these last couple of shows as we began this month. And now we come to that space of saying, I am the linchpin in all of this. I am the person, the glue that's holding it all together. But sometimes we're literally falling apart at the seams. I want to ask each of you this question, and we'll go round robin, and I'll start with Stacey. Stacey, what are some of the things that you are doing to make certain that you are prioritizing, Stacey?
I think for me, one of the things that I'm doing to prioritize me is just rebalancing me, So I sort of ended the year in a hectic space. I have a lot of projects going on, and I spend a lot of time talking to people about the importance of taking time to focus in every one of your major circles of life and finding a way to balance that. And I was out of balance. So I had to come back and sort of just start with rest. So I started the year off just by resting and doing nothing, just so I can have time to, recenter myself, hear my thoughts, hear the thoughts of my higher being and what I'm supposed to be coming into doing this year. And then just to clear my mind a little bit so that I can reset and plan for how I needed to move forward once I came out of the state of rest. So it's all about being balanced, identifying the spaces that I was operating in well, identifying the spaces that I wasn't putting enough time in. Like, for instance, I was neglecting the family time. I had an opportunity during Christmas to bring my grandbaby down from Arizona for a little bit. And it just threw me all off center because I was like, how do I operate in this space? So I had to, just say, Stacey, it's okay. Your work is going to be there tomorrow. Let's spend some time in the family circle. And then knowing when I needed to come out the family circle and say, okay, your projects at work are getting a little behind. Let's go balance that. And we won't even talk about this dissertation, okay? Because that right there, I tell you, that's a whole nother story. But just recentering, rebalancing, and refocusing yourself. You can start there.
Absolutely. I think that those are great tips that you've given because oftentimes we, get into a zone and it's like we're so accustomed to being rote. And for those of you who are hearing that word for the first time, it means just keep going in the same direction that you're going and everything is old hat and habit and there's nothing fresh about the nuances of our lives. Dr. Whit Bailey, tell us how you are prioritizing you in this season.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. The thing that I am realizing is that I'm trying to figure out who I am. For those of you who've had a chance to see some of the other shows, you know that I lost my husband about 9 months ago. And so this new year, with January 1st being his birthday, made me reset. And I don't really even know what that reset was. But knowing that there are things that are going to be happening in 2023 that are going to be a lot different because he's missing. So it's okay. It's me saying to myself very often, it's okay. It's okay. Just do it. And knowing that there's going to be a hole or there's going to be space or that it's going to feel uncomfortable, but also knowing that other people have gone through this and other people have made it to whatever that other side is, to know that it's okay. It's okay not to participate in things that I used to participate in all the time. It's okay to sit on the couch and watch a movie. It's okay to say no if people want to go out and have dinner. So I've learned to stop, to be present in the moment, and to say out loud, it's okay. It sounds, that word that you use, Jackie, rote, it sounds rote and it becomes rote. But again, I say, it's okay.
There's something healing and therapeutic about those types of affirmations, though. Even though it is rote, it's got a different feeling and a different sense of accomplishment each time you say it, because you can see progress in how you're making it and that it is okay. And each day you're keeping moving forward. And I know I'm going to come back to that. I put a pen in my paper to make sure that I come back to that. But I want to ask Aaliyah Watson about that. Aaliyah, how are you prioritizing yourself in this new season?
I love a lot of the things that some of the ladies touched on, but for me, a big thing is boundaries and also being comfortable with saying no. Like I heard her mention something about that if people ask you to go out to eat and you want to say no instead of over committing, just making sure that I say no, that I'm able to spend that time to fill my cup up so that I am able to be present for others and also in work. So I think just setting boundaries and being comfortable with saying no.
Well, I'm going to ask you this question because you're in that psychology space as a licensed professional counselor. And one of the things that Dr. Whit Bailey mentioned was this void that she has now that she is a widow. Can you talk to us for just a moment about some healthy ways that people can fill those voids when they've experienced a loss? Because those who've been watching for a while know that we've talked about loss of life from breast cancer. We've talked about loss of life, from our children dying of cancer or having an accident. And then personally, we have these various losses. And so there are voids there. So Aaliyah, talk to us, if you could, for just a moment about healthy ways to fill voids.
I think, again, the first advice that she gave with knowing and giving yourself the grace of being okay. Because I think a lot of people want to rush through the grief phase. They think after a certain amount of time that it shouldn't be as painful or the feeling should just go away, which is not accurate. So I think it's going to be giving yourself some grace to go through each of those emotions, go through each of those stages of grief, and then also being okay with asking for help if you need support from family members, if you actually need spiritual guidance, or also if you need to see a mental health professional to help you kind of get through this time period.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. As each of our guests have already talked about, I'm excited that they're contributing the things that they are, because it helps us discover where we're off center and off balance. And Stacey, I want to ask you that because you brought up the D word, the dissertation, and some of us do have things on our plate that we are trying to tackle and finish. And oftentimes there is, as Aaliyah said, this guilt and grace that goes along with how we jumpstart ourselves when we're talking about reprioritizing. How do you, or are you planning to reprioritize some of those things that you must get done in this season?
Yes, because that sort of happens for me by default. So yes, I am saying, okay, Stacey, you've been dragging this out for a very long time because you sort of put your all and your energy into things that you enjoy doing, and those things that become difficult or challenging for you or tedious for you, you be like, oh, I'll get to that in a little bit. I'll get to that. And so now for myself, I'm having to identify or attach my emotions to the things that I'm doing. So those things that don't really bring me the joy that I try to avoid, I try to find time to just say, okay, today you have to do the thing you don't want to do because it's necessary to just get it off your plate. So now I'm trying to trick my mind to say, well, good, if you go ahead on and sit down and write this paper and finish with this program, then it'll be done. And some days, for the most part, it works. I find it works better for me if I just go ahead on and book a vacation at the beach. I call them writing trips. So I go and book me a waterfront room and go down to the beach and just log in and just do nothing but write. So I have to be intentional about focusing my attention to the things that don't really, bring me that excitement, because I like to create stuff. So I'm in the process of starting a new high school. So I like to stay over in that space. Let me go fix those things. So just, find those things that are attached to your emotions, and the things that, you do not like doing, don't let it become a procrastination project. Just force yourself to get through it. Map it out. I sort of write down a massive things to do list, and then I laugh at it. And then I say, okay, let me pick the first 5 things that I feel like I can really do today. So just
I like that. I like that. You literally gave me the perfect segue. I like if each of you would give our audience something to be. And Stacey, you just mentioned the I word that I think is very important, which is be intentional. And I think that being intentional helps people focus themselves to reset priorities. Dr. Bailey, what is something that you would say that you would like for the audience to be as they begin to move forward? What is your be for them?
Well, the first thing that popped into my head is what I'm going to say, and that is be brave. Sometimes we have a fear of getting it done, and I'd like to give Stacey a piece of advice. It took me 3 tries to get my dissertation done. And on the 3rd try, I was in the process of working on my dissertation, and I was fussing about it and complaining and, worried about trying to get this done. And there was a young man, a young student that looked at me and he says, "It's just a paper." And I was insulted. I thought, how could you? How dare you? And a couple of days later, I thought about that. And I said, you know what? It's just a paper. And it gave me the ability to be brave enough to do it. And I don't know if there was just a fear. I don't know what was stopping me, the procrastination, but being brave through situations, things that you're afraid to do. You're afraid to be successful sometimes, or afraid that you might miss out, or afraid that you might mess up. But have that feeling of being brave, standing a little bit taller, taking a deep breath, counting down from 10, bringing somebody along with you. But I would say that would be mine. Be brave.
Absolutely. Aaliyah, what would be your B for our audience today?
I would say be intentional. Be intentional with the things that you put your energy in, intentional with the things that you say to yourself and others, and the reason why you're trying to reach some of these goals, and intentionally setting goals. I'm huge on thinking that people should set goals, even if they're just goals for the day or goals for the week. So be intentional with all of your actions.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that information. When we come back after the break, let's talk a little bit about how do we relax our mind. I know it is constantly going 1,000 miles a minute, but sometimes you got to slow it down. When we're back after the break.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, it's about being brave. It's about being intentional. It's about setting yourself as a priority in your life. But oftentimes we're not able to do that because our mind is constantly racing. I have heard where the heart is, that's where the body goes, where the mind is, that's where our actions are. But in all of that, we have to figure out how to slow down. And I'm going to start with Stacey because as she's already mentioned, she's got tons of things on her plate. And most of you have tons of things on your plate. You left 2022 thinking about all the things you had on the back burner, some of the envelopes that you had opened, and you realize it's time to set your intention on getting those things accomplished. But it's not easy being able to do those things when your mind is racing. So Stacey, let's have a conversation about that for a moment, because, as you are a balanced living coach, you are an educator extraordinaire, and you are in that space of discovering what it means to just kind of quiet the mind in order to be able to focus on those things that are important to you. In what ways are you finding value in relaxing your mind?
So I would use this analogy like I teach the kids when they ask me certain questions, and I'll tell them, do you want the real answer or do you want the right answer? And you always strive for the real answer. But the right answer to that is, I'm going to say, in my perfect world, I like to get up and meditate and slow my mind. But the real answer is, even when I'm meditating, my mind is still going. And I'm like, what is going on? Because I can't stop my brain. And like, in my ADHD, all these thoughts be coming into my mind when I silence myself. I think the key to that is, for me, I have to just keep doing it. And so I found how to manage that space when I say, okay, I'm going to be very intentional about sitting here. I'm going to turn the TV off. I started out saying I'm going to do 30 minutes. I'm going to do 30 minutes of meditation, right? Honey, I've been cook the dinner in my head. I've been thought about all the stuff that I was like, it's not working. This is not working. So I took it down to about 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, Stacey, you could do 15 minutes. I just had to learn how to forgive myself. So now I just lay there in complete darkness and silence. And if I can get a good 3 minutes of where I'm not thinking about anything, I just try to see the clouds going through, and whatever's important that pop up, I try to remember it. But silencing yourself is something that can be very challenging for some people, especially when you feel like you have 110 things that you could be doing at this time that you're trying to silence your mind. So now I've had to just learn how to forgive myself, give myself grace, and then force myself just to take a minute and just sit and do nothing without feeling guilty about it. I don't know if that answered the question for anybody, but
let me
that's
tell
what
you,
I'm going through right now.
I think that what you said was perfect, and I'll tell you why. Because I heard you say you went from 30 minutes to 15 minutes to a minute and maybe 3 minutes, and you said it without feeling guilty about it, that you have gotten to a space where you know what your capacity is before all of these thoughts start to come into your head. And I think that that's important because, Stacey, we talk a lot about the power of negative self-talk. Right. And most people start to beat themselves up. Oh, myself, I'm so silly. I'm so dumb. I'm so crazy. I'm so whatever, because you can't stay focused on a thing. And what you decided to do is, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to do what I can, and I'm going to be okay, to use Dr. Whit Bailey's, vocabulary. But it is getting to that space that you relax your mind enough to really figure out what the brain can handle.
Right.
Balancing your brain is not easy.
Right. And you're right about the negative thought patterns. You do have to do a lot of work on removing those negative thought patterns. So once they start coming in, you're like, Stacey, why you can't sit here? I'll be like, honey, I stay here for 3 minutes a day. So I'm very intentional now about the voices that are coming through my mind in any moment. And if it's something negative, I'll be like, oh, okay, I can't believe that. How can I rephrase it? How can I rethink it to something positive? So, because that's what's going to keep you moving in the direction you need to go. You have to have those positive thoughts, because that's going to fuel your beliefs about yourself. And those self-beliefs becomes your superpower, because you can have all the actions, you can have all the goals, you can have everything mapped out on your vision boards that everybody's been working on the last few weeks. But if you don't have that self-belief, if you don't empower it with belief and knowing what you can do, then you'll do nothing anyway. So yeah, we worked out the negative thought patterns. You're going to have them, but you just have to know when you're having it and then refocus it.
Absolutely. I want to invite Aaliyah into this conversation for a moment, because the battle of the brain, the mind is a powerful tool. And oftentimes we succumb to some of those thoughts that we have going on in our head. Aaliyah, as you are working with individuals, and even you yourself, how are you helping people, or what can you share with our audience about the battle for the mind and how important it is not to speak words of ill into yourself?
I think it goes kind of something that you mentioned earlier. Wherever your thoughts go, that's kind of where your actions will contribute. But the first thing I do is encourage people to become aware of how often you think negative thoughts, because a lot of times we just go throughout the day and it's like, oh, I'm late. Oh, I hate that stupid red light. Like, you say so many negative things throughout the day that we don't notice. So I think the first thing is always awareness. Like becoming aware of, when am I doing this? How often am I doing this? Is there a certain activity that surrounds these thoughts when they do come? And then after that, working on being proactive towards countering them. Like, yes, this is one bad thing, but what are 2 positive things that came from that? Or what are 2 possible options of how this could still end up in a good way or in my favor?
That's interesting. So in your favor is a very good point, because oftentimes Okay, so in this coaching arena where I sit a lot of times and in the space of pastoral counseling, people don't value or see the importance of what you just said, that they can't turn it off. How do self-limiting negative beliefs, things that you're never going to amount to anything, your parent was nothing, so you're going to be nothing. How often do people combat those thoughts, even when they're doing great and positive? That self-sabotaging seems to kick in and they can't relax their mind because other people's words are playing in their head.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a snowball effect. It starts off real small, little tiny thoughts. And the next thing you know, you have actually completely talked yourself out of an opportunity or into trying something different or taking a leap of faith because you believed all these thoughts and you keep building up and feeding that voice. Versus if we try to at least pause that voice and at least reach out for something positive, if that means consulting a friend to kind of bring you back to reality, consulting your higher power, or just kind of maybe doing some type of mindfulness activity to bring yourself to what's in the present now and what can I control.
There is power in the exhale. That's all I'm going to say, because sometimes you got to and just dump it in that deep breath. And we often don't give ourselves space, and relaxing the brain can sometimes come from breathing exercises. As Aaliyah said, talking to people that you trust. And as Stacey said, knowing when to just let go of that idea. And we do have difficulty being able to let go and release ourselves from things. So I'm going to ask both of you this. I'll start with Stacey. Stacey, when do you decide to just let it go? I'm not going to even answer the question. When do you decide to just kind of let it go?
Well, now it depends on what I'm letting go.
Okay.
So if it's work related and I feel like I'm overwhelmed and it's starting to affect my mental, my health, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm feeling bad about it, I'll let it go for a moment. If it's something that I can just let go and don't have to do, let me delegate or relegate to somebody else. Let me give it to somebody else to do. If it's a person, because now I'm in this stage in my life now where I'm letting a few people go. And it's harder to let go of people, but I've been doing a real good assessment about who's close to me, who's around me right now, and what are you saying to me? What are you feeding about me? What are you speaking about yourself around me? Because sometimes you don't even have to be talking negative around or surrounding me, but you could be talking negative about yourself, and you're just draining me having to listen to it. So I'm now just doing that assessment of who are these people around me that can be influencing my earwaves, right? I'm just in what's coming out your mouth. If it's too negative and it's starting to slow me up, I'm spending a lot of times thinking about your mess, then it's time for me to let you go. But I heard Oprah say the other day in one of her quick reels, she was like, you can let people go that's close to you, just depends on how you do it. If you let them go in love, then later on in life, you'll be able to go back and recover some of that. So I've been thinking about, how do I let people go in love? How can I say, okay, I'm going to still speak to you every now and then, but you just can't have total access to me right now. Because, sometimes we can just create spaces for ourselves that create negative energy. And right now I'm protecting my space, my energy, my thoughts, all of that. You have control over that. You control what you allow to penetrate and influence you. So just get control.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, what you just said was both healing and empowering. Aaliyah, when do you decide to just kind of let it go? Like, I am not going to entertain. I am not going to keep going in this trajectory. When do we get to that point, and how do we move into it seamlessly?
I know for me, I tend to let go of things whenever I realize that there's nothing that I can do. Like, there's nothing within my control. Like, I know we talked about friendships, relationships. I can't control other people. So if I know that I've done everything that I put in the effort, then I'm going to let the situation go. In reference to people, in reference to like negative thoughts and scenarios, if it's something that I know that I can't control or that I can't like do any groundwork, like if it's like, okay, I'm trying to work on finishing a book. Have I consulted somebody? Am I writing every day? So making sure that I'm taking the steps, and when I'm out of steps, then I let go. But then also I'm really big on believing in my higher power. So I'm trying to let go a little easier, just do my part and then let go and trust the process.
I love that. Letting go and trust the process. We're going to step out for a moment for a break. Because when we come back, I want to have a one-on-one with Dr. Whit Bailey. I think that as we're moving forward and we're thinking about resetting our priorities and relaxing our mind, there's something else we need to do that's extremely important, and it's rethinking our actions when we're back after the break.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And I'm excited to invite into this conversation Dr. Terry Whit Bailey. She is the leader of the Center for Leadership Development. And whether you like it or not, you are a leader. You may not like the way you do it. You may not feel comfortable in it, but you are at least a leadership of one. And that one is yourself. Dr. Whit Bailey, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So let's have a conversation about how do we get to this place of rethinking our actions? Because sometimes our personality, the people that we work with, that coworker space that we're in, we can become too comfortable. We sometimes think of our coworkers as family, but there is this level of separation that is professional. How are we going to get into that understanding of behavior in the workplace that's really supposed to be acceptable versus unacceptable behavior?
Wow, you asked a very tough question there. Balancing between the personal and the professional. You know, and I'm not the leader, I'm the vice president. I want to make sure that that's clear. But as the vice president over the largest area of my organization, it is important to make sure that my staff understands that boundary. And I love to be friendly with the staff. I think that they are amazing. And in some ways, it is sort of like a family. But there is that line that has to be drawn to make sure that things are getting done, to make sure that people are following the standard operating procedures, if you will, of the organization. But it's also important to make sure that we are sharing and rewarding and affirming and giving grace. We can get to a point on the job where if something isn't done on a specific day, that's it. And we sometimes need to have grace because there are other things that go on in people's personal lives. In my case, it was my husband's health that, you know, my organization was very, what's the word? They were gracious in giving me the time that I needed and the space that I needed. And so I, in turn, know and understand my staff well enough to know when they need that grace, but to also be able to help them personally and professionally, privately, especially personally, but it's personally, privately, when there are issues that are going on. And I think when you start to talk about family in the workplace, that's where it can get messy, because it's very important that people don't need to know everybody else's business, but somehow they figure it out. I can't quite understand how that always seems to happen. Before the day ends, people tend to know things. So it's very important as a leader in the organization to have that level of confidentiality so that staff can come to you with personal issues so that you can help them to do their jobs well, but also to help them to know that it's okay, help them to know that you are there for them on a personal level as much as you can be, and to assist them with the professional things and or the personal things that go on. And it happens all the time. And so, yes, it is very, very important to have that.
So let me ask you this question, because when we talk about rethinking our actions, in society, there are a group of people that are called job hoppers. They go from place to place to place to place, employer to employer to employer, but they often never realize that they are the commonality in the things that are happening at each of those places. In the world of balancing and helping people really think about the self that shows up at work, how can we help them identify some of their own habits and behaviors that may be the cause of them having to go from job to job to job to job? What does that look like when it comes to recognizing and identifying that you may be the issue?
Yes, and it may not just be that they're going from job to job to job. They may be going from relationship to relationship to relationship, or housing to housing to housing, or friend to friend to friend. And so again, wherever you go, there you are. So you have to help. Again, sometimes people can't see that for themselves, but in love, to be able to share with individuals, this is what's happening, or to find ways as a professional to help them to see who they are professionally or personally. I spoke before in another episode about love languages, helping people to know what their love language is. Whether it's words of affirmation. And so if a person needs to be affirmed in the work that they're doing or the actions that they are doing, then we need to help them by affirming them. If it's acts of service, if we need to work with someone and they know that that's their love language, as a leader of the organization, I need to know and understand that so that I can help them to be successful. And with that, we hope that we will have greater longevity on the job, in a relationship, in an opportunity. And I think that it goes hand in hand. And understanding yourself, sometimes someone else has to help you to understand who you are.
Let me invite Aaliyah into this conversation, because something that you just mentioned about the individual themselves, and oftentimes we hear people say they and them. Aaliyah, can you talk to us about not taking ownership of where you are in an equation? Because oftentimes I hear people say they at this job or these people over there, and I never hear people, or should I say hardly ever, hear people say the role that they played in a situation or circumstance or issue.
It's hard for people to be accountable for their actions, especially in the workplace, whenever the consequences could be like termination, or even in kind of relationships, people don't want to look inferior. But I think that the way to kind of do that is also maybe starting off with accountability to kind of maybe lower the playing field more or less of the conversation, so people don't feel attacked, or it might be a little more easier for them to be vulnerable to admit their fault or be accountable for their actions in the situation.
So being vulnerable, yes, is a very big part of it. And then also taking accountability. I love that A word that you mentioned. How do we, and this could be for either of you, some people in our workplaces are often triggered, and as you said, they feel attacked. Does that come from not being able to see that they play a part in a role, or is it just that I refuse to be accountable to anybody? Terry, you can go first, and then Aaliyah jump in.
Well, I think that I talked earlier about being brave, and sometimes we have these fears, again, that we bring to the workplace, that we're not good enough or that we didn't have the qualifications. And so when someone does ask you to do an assignment or to be a part of a group, this fear triggers, and so a reaction will happen. And I think helping people to know that as a leader, again, as a manager or someone that's overseeing folks, help them to know that you're with them, that you're helping them along the way. But I think that trigger of fear may happen because they have this fear within themselves that someone has found out about them or sees something in them that they were trying to hide.
Absolutely, Aaliyah.
I would kind of say, because you asked the question, is it the fact that they don't want to be accountable or that they don't know? I think it can be a combination of both, because in the workplace and unfortunately in the world and society right now, like everybody's kind of tunnel vision, like focused on me, what I need to get done, what I need to do, what's hindering me, that sometimes people don't step back and look at the bigger picture, especially in like workplace environments. A lot of times like part A needs to be done before part B, or this is intertwined or connected. So I think a lot of people just kind of need more awareness. And I think that jobs should promote open communication and like constructive criticism, more or less, in a nurturing way and environment to promote growth and like a good camaraderie around the staff.
Absolutely. And this is where I'm going to invite Stacy in because she is hands-on with her staff. You see your people every day, Stacy. You know what most of them are going through. You know what your families and your kids are going through. How in your hands-on approach are you helping people be comfortable with the accountability that you require?
I think that was my last year's lesson. And I had to, that's why I wrote the book. I had to go back and say, let me know the emotional intelligence level of my staff. Let me start understanding that a little bit more, because just like the other lady said, you start by one, holding everybody accountable, and you share. You be able to give your constructive criticism, your evaluations, and all of that you do as a good leader. But then what about when you're doing those things and that employee take it very personal, their emotions fall apart, and then, I coined it as, I did some research on it, and it's actually a thing called the effect-driven emotion. Basically, this event, somebody told you about it, it caused fear, anger, whatever, and then it puts you in such an emotional space that now you start laboring in your emotions. You start coming to work acting one way and not being truthful about how you really feel about what's going on. So you start becoming this actor. And so now when we're interacting with each other, you're not being real. So you're not really growing from it because you're looking outward and blaming people or blaming others or so forth. So I think I had to go back and say, well, let's do some stuff with our emotional intelligence. Let's know, how do you act when you're fearful of something? Let's bring an awareness to, how do you act when something brings you or make you angry? And then let's talk about, how can you have these conversations without feeling threatened? Because at the end of the day, even when I say, hey, I have an open door policy, a lot of people, if you are operating on a low level of emotional intelligence, you won't even use that open door policy because you're assuming that when someone come in and talk, you're thinking about, am I going to get fired? Am I going to get written up? Am I going to get whatever? So we had to go back and start saying, like, how do you have these conversations? How do you, we put group norms in place. What do we want for this environment to look like so that we can all function together? Let's have that conversation, and let's identify the 10 things that we want to see in our environment. And then let's identify how we're going to hold each other accountable to doing it. So when you see Sally over there doing something that she know not on these 10 things, who's going to feel comfortable with having the real conversation with her so it doesn't always have to come from me? Because if we're working together and holding each other accountable as a team, and we build our team efficacy, then now we can sort of like deflate some of those emotional things that's attached to it. So we have to restructure some stuff just to improve our way that we was communicating, so that you can learn that you're learning and you're growing. What is your growth mindset? You're growing. So you can't always see if someone is coming to you with something that can improve you or improve yourself, that is something bad or negative, or you get so emotional about it. So we had to say, are we operating from a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? But at the end of the day, do you realize that it all comes back to you? Everything you need is already within yourself. You're responsible for making yourself happy. You're responsible for making yourself. And you also have to know that the job is going to be graceful. We're going to have grace for you, but it's a two-way street. You got to give and you got to take. You can't expect for me to understand all your personal issues, but you don't understand the impact of your personal life and how it's impacting your professional life. You have the responsibility for keeping that balance. And when you get out of balance on either end, they're quick to come and tell their employer how you're out of balance on your professional end, but they don't see, in fact, that sometimes your professional self can be pulling in between the two. So we have to keep you balanced. So we just talk about it now. And I'm gonna still love you tomorrow, but we gotta talk about it.
She's gonna still love you. I think that these are excellent opportunities because, as you know, we think about these things and we're getting ready to go into break. And so I'm gonna hold that thought till we come back from after the break. Thank you, ladies, for sharing that information. When we come back after the break, let's talk about that for a moment, because we're gonna reset our priorities. We're going to learn how to relax our mind. We're gonna rethink our actions. But when you think about it, there's something else that you need to do when we're back after the break.
hatred on the streets. A horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shots.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And there's so much that we've talked about on this show, and it all centers around you because we love you and we want the best for you. But now we're in this space, we have to really, really think about how do we resolve to show up as our authentic self. It is hard. I know it's hard for us to take off all these layers of the things that have happened in our lives and our experiences, but you have to figure out how to be authentic and own the space that you're in. Welcome back, everybody. Let's have a conversation of conversations about how does this authentic self come? And I'm going to ask Aaliyah this question first, because in the work that you do, I know you're trying to help people become better. You want them to get out there and live their best life, but there's so many masks that people are wearing. How do we get people to unmask and then reveal who they really are? Aaliyah.
That's what I kind of even tell myself, tell my clients. For a lot of people, it's like you want to go somewhere, but at times you have to pause and figure out who you are, where you are now, what are you capable of doing, what work still needs to get done to achieve what you want to. So I think it's good to kind of do like a self-inventory before we can even really evaluate and gauge what progress we want to make or even what direction to go.
What do some of the masks look like? And we used to use, oh, this person is two-faced, or this person is flighty, or this person is a chameleon. Those are just a few terms. Leah, what are some of other new terms? Because a lot of our audience is in between, we're generational at this stage. Mm-hmm. What are some of the other terms that we're seeing related to people not being authentic?
I don't know like the hip terms right now, but I know like in therapy and everything, there's a lot of people trying to do like imposter syndrome, which is also like, that's more of like trying to like knowing you have the skills, but feeling like you don't fit in. So I don't know if that necessarily goes, but I think a lot of people do like a lot of overcompensating or actually just trying to put on a facade, especially now with social media. Everybody wants to make it seem like their life might be something that it's not, to make it seem like they're keeping up with the Joneses. So I think it's just a lot of overcompensating going on right now. And then people fear looking inferior or lacking.
Wow. And then that is a hard hurdle to jump. Dr. Bailey, when you think about these things and, how people are showing up, how do we identify in your work with personality tests and things of that nature? Are those a real indicator of who you are when you show up every day?
Well, I think that and I'm going to speak from personal experience and phraseology. There's a phrase where people say, fake it until you make it. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not a good thing. And there are days as a leader, again, coming into the workplace where I have 30 people that look to me as the leader. If I'm not feeling it, I still have to come to work and I still have to do the job and I still have to get it done. So I may be faking through it till I can feel like I want to be there. I think that what people do see, though, is the positivity of it. Now, people see me as a glass half full person, And I may not always be a happy person, but I have joy and I understand where that comes from. That's my God-given gift to have joy in the things that I do. But that doesn't mean that I'm happy all the time. So the authentic self is knowing the gifts that you have that you bring to the table, bringing those gifts to the table, helping others to know that it's okay to have a moment. It's really okay. But sometimes you got to get the work done. If there's stuff that needs to be done. In our case, we interact with young people. And so the young people need to hear about our situations. They need to know that we're overcoming. We may not have overcome, but we may be overcoming. And I think I'm at that place where I'm overcoming. I'm going through. I'm not on the other side. And so they can see that. They can hear me tell stories about that. They can try to understand it from my perspective and put it into their perspective. So again, dealing with staff as well as dealing with thousands of young people each and every year, we have to bring what that authentic self is, but it might be the authentic self that has to be professional on that day. The authentic self that can give personal stuff and it can be okay to do that. So there's a balance that has to happen. In my world, there's a balance that has to happen. And it's uncomfortable sometimes. It's necessary most of the time, but it has to be done.
I like that. My takeaway from what you just said is that going through the process leads to progress. And, I think that that's a great affirmative reminder of the value in taking time to really discover who you are, what you're going to be. Some of us are still in the process of growing up. And so, what does that look like? Where do I find my baseline and how do I get there? Stacey, what do you have to say about these things? Because oftentimes our environment and being vulnerable and transparent can be painful, for our authentic self to show up. And sometimes people can be too authentic.
I don't think you can bring your authentic self anywhere until you know who you are and until you love yourself and accept yourself as fully as who your imperfections. When you start accepting who you are truly and fully and knowing how you're treating yourself and how you're respecting yourself, when you can do all those things, then I think you can bring it to the table and identify and be able to flow it out to others, but if you're going to be authentic, you need to know, well, who are you and how do you love you? Because if you're at work looking for me to give you a hug and make you happy and do all those things, or looking for your coworkers to do all those things, or you're looking outward, you're comparing yourself to others and your relationship messed up, then you got to go back and look at, how much am I loving myself? Because that self-love, I'm telling you, it'll help you be able to forgive yourself for the things you don't know. It'll help you be able to let go of grudges. You won't be mad at people. And because, I know for me, I love myself too much to walk around being mad at somebody. It takes too much energy. I'll know how to meet my own needs. I'll know how to be in environments when I love myself. I know if I'm in an environment, am I getting from this what's necessary for me? It's not necessarily, I'm not go out and saying be selfish and be over with it, but you at least have to know what it is that you know about you and what you want and what you love in you, because then you'll know how to go seek it somewhere. You'll know how to go ask people for it. You'll know how to, set those boundaries in place. But I think you can't be authentic if you don't know who you are and if you don't love who you are.
That's a very powerful statement. Aaliyah, she mentioned something related to environment, and then you talked about the role that social media plays. Oh, man, this question, I'm trying to figure out how to really phrase it properly, because being sensitive to the needs of parents who are raising children who were out of school for the 2 years that we were in the pandemic and helping them grow up, they missed a lot of that social emotional engagement. How do we help our audience establish the proper baseline so that they themselves as parents and the children or young adults can show up in the spaces where they have to be present?
I would say the first thing is opening up the lines of communication, asking the children how they felt. Do they feel like they're behind their peers? Do they have trouble identifying or communicating with their peers? So seeing how they feel about it, if they feel that they lack, and then also looking at community resources. There are a lot of free resources to get kids in extracurricular activities to kind of build that in-person social interaction so that they can become more comfortable with interacting and figuring out kind of who they are or what type of people they want to be around, because we do know that companionship and interaction plays a major part in like our happiness.
So one of the things that I'm going to ask each of you as we go around is being able to ask for help isn't always easy. And so, Aaliyah, I'll start with you. What are one of the ways, or if you could put it in properly, put it in the form of a question. If someone had to ask for help, what is a good way to ask for help? Because sometimes people just don't know how to say it. In this age of open, honest, transparent vulnerability and communication, how do we help people ask the right question so they can get the help that they need? Aaliyah.
I wouldn't necessarily say I have a question, but my whole big thing that I advocate for is it's okay to not be okay. So, you know, a lot of the times it's like, how you doing? Everybody's like, oh, good, fine. But learning how to be true in those answers and actually, no, I'm not okay. I don't have to be able to go into details, but just getting that support or just, I'm not okay. It's okay with not having it all together or not feeling like everything is always good.
So maybe not in the form of a question, but in the form of a statement. It's like, I'm not okay today. And hopefully someone will know what that means when you say that, and then be able to come alongside you and give you the guidance and direction. Or just
asking somebody, are they okay? And then hoping that they'll be transparent in their answer if they're genuinely feeling okay, just making sure your tone and the setting is appropriate.
Okay, well, that makes perfectly good sense. Dr. Wood-Bailey.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I don't allow my staff, when I say, so how are things going, and they say fine, we have to go much further, because I don't want that one word answer. And so I want to dig deeper into whatever that question is, whether it's personal or professional. And so I want to be helpful. That's again one of my gifts, to be able to help people. But on the opposite side, I'm the one that doesn't know how to ask for help yet. And so knowing that I can do that for others, but I'm still at that point where I'm not ready to receive the help that I know I need. And so for people that are listening, I bet there are people that are out there that are just like me. So I'm still learning how to do that. And hopefully 2023 will be the year that I can get the help that I should be asking for.
That makes perfectly good sense, because oftentimes people will ask us, how can I help you, or what can I do? And we'll say things like, oh, I got it. I'm good. I'm fine. It's okay. And we turn away the help that has come our way. Stacey.
I was going to say, if I was to be 100% transparent, so I'm going to give you one that's going to help you know that there is others out there like you, because I do not feel comfortable asking people to help me do anything. And that is something that I'm working on within myself. But I think, you know, the thing that you would need to do is, I wouldn't have a question. I think I'm trying to get better at least identifying what I need help in, and then being very clear about how others, if I have someone who can help me with this, what would that help look like? Because now if I had to communicate it, I can clearly list out, are you able to do A, B, C, or D? And I'm being very clear. And that way, that person, whoever I'm reaching out to ask for the help, they have the opportunity to see if their skill sets is matching to that. And if it doesn't, then it helps them to decide if this is something they should be able to step in and help me with or not help me with. I think the problem, though, is I have trust issues, you know, and don't judge me, because I'm working through that. So, you know, it all starts with trust, being able to be in relationship with a person enough to know that I can trust that if I give you something that's very intimate to me or very close to me, or something that's, you know, a part of a project that I'm working on, can I trust you enough to be honest about your ability to do or not do it? And, you know, so I'm still working in that area, but that's where I've gotten so far.
I think that that's an excellent way to end the segment, because many of us are in that space, and we need to be okay with not being okay. We need to be okay with being okay. But then we also need to take the time to know when to ask for help, and then how to know when help has come and receive it. I'll give my reflections when we're back after the break.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can see, getting you in order is a very important part of being able to live a balanced and near stress-free life. Oftentimes, we're going to need help, but we don't know how to ask. And then there are times when help comes and we don't know how to receive. And all of those things are perfectly fine as long as you know that it is important that you are able to move yourself forward by resetting your priorities, relaxing your mind, resolving that you are going to bring your authentic self to the table, and then rethinking your actions. Because oftentimes how we approach the things that come our way will either lead us down a path of not being able to ever recover from those things that we need to heal from, or it will take us right where we need to be to get the help and the support that we need. Our ask of you today is to love you and take care of yourself. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye now.